Hello there. This is part 2 to my response to Mark Knight. In his awakening video, he talks about there being a dome, a metallic dome made of metal. And he talked about meteorites maybe coming from this dome. This reminded me of a book I have in my collection. It's called Light as a Motive Power. Beautiful looking cover. And it's by Lieutenant R.H. Ahmed. Subtitled A Series of Meteorological Essays. In this book, he says that he's a globe earther, because he didn't know that the earth was flat. But still, he believes surrounding the earth is a metallic sphere. So if you just swap that with the flat earthers, it would be a dome. So he believes there's a metallic sphere surrounding the earth, and up in the upper atmosphere he believes there's like metallic gas, and this gas forms into the what we call meteorites. He doesn't believe meteorites are out. He believes meteorites are inside the Earth's atmosphere and fall down from there. I'll go to the contents just to give you a quick glance first. Right. Yeah, it says chapter 2 here. It says the atmosphere, its magnetism and electricity. Components of atmosphere air are either metallic gases or hold volatilized metal in suspension. Electricity, magnetism. How metallic gas finds its way into the atmosphere. The paramagnetic and diamagnetic forces of oxygen. Electricity is heat, light and cold. Faraday, Franklin, and Quetelet's experiments variation of the magnetic needles. Oersted's formula dippled the magnetic needle caused by the intensity of electric fluid. Intensity proportionate to the convergence of the magnetic meridians. Gravity resolved into two forces, light as a motive power. Mr. Cook's experiments on revolving disks. Reason why the disks revolve explained. Effects of light on all celestial bodies. More motion in orbit. Diurnal rotation. You see, this book's also mainly about the weather and the light and electricity as the cause of the weather and the tides and the wind in his circuits. He wrote about 3 books, all based on the weather, and this is another chapter 3 is another important chapter regarding Mark Knight. Chapter 3, the regions of perpetual snow and the snow line on the mountains. Snow line surrounds the globe. This fact lost sight by the meteorologists. The atmosphere forms a metallic mantle to the Earth, or a spherical metallic shell surrounding the globe. Arctic and Antarctic currents, aerolites, component parts of, cannot come from without our atmosphere, do not contain any matter foreign to the Earth. Aerolites travel towards the magnetic pole of the hemisphere, never or seldom from west to east. The snow line on the mountains, the physical geography of the world proves the existence of the cold metallic atmosphere above the snow line. A spherical metallic shell surrounds the globe, enclosing it as within the plates of a steam boiler. The vapor from the earth forms the steam. Steam forms the winds and works the universal aerial machine. Aerolites, by the way, is his word for meteorites. We'll go to that chapter now, chapter 3, page 57. Mountain snow line, chapter 3. The regions of perpetual snow and the snow line of the mountain. At the present time, owing to the greater facilities of locomotion introduced by science, men as a rule travel more often farther and wider than they were wont to do in days gone by, and therefore, to most people, the majestic appearance of the snow-capped Alps and Pyrenees as they burst upon the tourist's vision are familiar, while to many the far grander Himalayas and Andes, together with the view presented by majestic Orizaba, as seen hundreds of miles off from the bosom of the Gulf of Mexico, are all scenes of more or less frequent recurrence. By tracing the snow-clad peaks of the various lofty mountains situated thousands of miles apart in each of the continents composing the dry land of the earth, we find that the following a certain clearly marked limit at various heights from the level of the sea. There exists above us a cold, wintry climate, a stratum of atmosphere enveloping the earth in its snow-white mantle, stretching from pole to pole, and from whence the sun rises to where he sets. The various altitudes of the lower limit of this perpetual snow line are clearly marked and defined as a reference to plate. We'll demonstrate, and it will be seen that it is lower in the southern than in the northern hemisphere, as is shown by the snow line of Mount Egmont in New Zealand. Nevertheless, up to the present time, meteorologists appear to have completely overlooked the fact that such an envelope surrounding the world must contain elements of primary importance in founding and establishing any theory on the atmospherical circulation. Dr. Franklin seems for one moment to have given the subject a thought, where he says, "There seems to be a region higher in the air over all countries, where it is always winter, where frost continually exists, since in the midst of summer, on the surface of the earth, it falls often from above in the form of hail." Other meteorologists, however, including Lieutenant Maury, only take into consideration the effect of the cold snow on the currents of air it impedes in their progress towards that destination, which each respective theory assigns to these currents, and in a manner the snow-capped peaks or range of mountains, instead of being looked upon as the beacon placed by nature to denote the presence of a freezing frozen region around the world, have come to be viewed in the light of obstacles to the theory being propounded, which must be surmounted and overleapt at any risk, even at that of assigning to nature a function she could not perform. Years have now elapsed since Dr. Franklin, and later on Mr. Quetelet, conclusively proved the existence of positive electricity within the atmosphere. Faraday, on the other hand, discovered the magnetic properties of it, as also of one of its component gases, oxygen, and that this gas, when cool, exerts a greater magnetic influence than when it is heated. We can thus reasonably assume that the cold, frozen currents above, in addition to holding positive electricity, exert a powerful magnetic influence on everything they surround, and that absorbing the relatively speaking diamagnetic vapors thrown off by the earth and ocean within their fold, they must necessarily have some share in forcing these vapors to perform their circuits as the surface winds of the globe. The existence of the perpetual snow on the summits of the mountain ranges surrounding the globe has invariably been attributed not to the cold current in which these portions of the earth are situated, but the high elevation they have attained from the level of the sea. And thus, while on one hand philosophers attribute the existence of ice and snow in the polar regions to the great distance at which these portions of our globe are situated from the sun, on the other they account for the existence of perpetual snow on the high mountains within the tropical regions to their being so much nearer the sun than they are arid heated plains 25,000 feet below. Such in effect is the actual explanation of the existing theory, which we contend is fallacious. These snow-capped mountain summits are nearer the sun than the torrid valleys beneath. They are formed of rock and earth salts, minerals, and every other body contained within the strata below, and should radiate as much, if not more heat than these latter, from the fact of their being so much nearer the sun, and the fact that they actually do so is conclusively proved by the perpetual snow lying on their surface, which at very high altitudes, up to which the vapors of the earth never rise, is formed by the sudden precipitation of the vapor drawn out of the mountain peak by the sun, which vapor is precipitated as soon as it is formed by the frigid current of the atmosphere, wherein summits of high ranges exist. The cold current is created, as will be hereafter explained, by means of the polar regions, extracting every single drop of moisture left in the passage winds on their entering into the polar calms. The perfectly dry air thus formed, being paramagnetic, is repulsed by the magnetic pole it has reached, and is thereby forced into the upper current, travelling over the surface. Currents forming the constant winds of the earth. We base our assumption that the magnetic poles of the Earth both attract and repel the metallic gas forming our atmosphere on the fact that when water is decomposed by means of galvanic battery, its component gases fly to opposite poles. And it is in this manner that both oxygen and hydrogen are often obtained. In the atmosphere, however, these gases form a natural combination, and the whole body would thus be continually repelled from that pole towards which the force of heat had driven it, and in the manner the upper currents would be formed and kept continuously moving back towards the equator, in addition to the laws of nature, drawing them thither to fill what otherwise soon become a vacuum, which of all things nature abhors the most. Being perfectly dry, this atmosphere forms a metallic mantle enveloping our globe, and may be said to be spherical metallic shell presenting a concave surface to the earth and a convex one to the celestial bodies, the limit of its concave surface being clearly defined by the lower limit of snow line on the mountains in either hemisphere. The reason why this cold metallic atmosphere neutralizes the effect of the rays of the sun will be elucidated in a future chapter, when we shall bring forward positive proof that this is actually the case, as for the instance when prior to the northers of Mexico coming on evaporation is suddenly checked and deposited over the surface of the earth, visibly to the naked eye. Although the heat of the sun at this time increases and is felt by the human body to be more intense, there's no power whatever to develop evaporation, and the moisture lies for hours or days in the full glare of the sun, owing to the fact that the cold, freezing current is breaking its bounds and is descending towards the surface of the earth. Having proceeded so far on our voyage of discovery, we will name the aerial currents above in which frost is perpetual by the name of the pole from which it originates. Thus we will call the current commencing at the North Pole the Arctic, and the one coming from the south the Antarctic current. These currents carry the perpetual frost of the poles right round the globe, and it is the upward pressure of the unmagnetized vapor developed over the whole surface of the earth that keeps these currents away from its surface. When at stated seasons the metallic gases of the Arctic current are by nature let in amongst our surface winds, we from experience that phenomenon which we call frost, and which originates from the amount of dry metallic matter held in suspension by the gases of the cold Arctic current. The intensity of the frost depends entirely upon the quantity of metallic matter held in suspension, and we cannot better illustrate our meaning than by quoting the old saying that extreme cold burns, while on the other hand it is known fact that in the polar regions naked metal blisters the skin, and in consequence all vessels employed in the whale fisheries within the Arctic regions are forced to have those metallic instruments which come in contact with the skin covered with leather or felt to protect it from being burnt or blistered. It is this manner that we account for the origin of the frost, which burns the bosoms of our fruit trees, and causes the frostbite. The metal held in suspension in these upper currents is susceptible of being at any moment precipitated to the earth, and the fact that it is so precipitated is clearly proved by the aerolite, the thunderbolt, the fireball, and the meteoric dust, which are all formed in these upper regions to fall at our feet, messengers, as it were, sent by nature to prove to us the existence of the metal-laden currents above our heads. Humboldt, in his Cosmos, quoting Berzelius, gives us the analysis of aerolite, from which we find that it contained nearly 1/3 of all the known simple bodies, its component parts being iron, nickel, cobalt, manganese, chromium, copper, arsenic, zinc, potash, soda, sulfur, phosphorus, and carbon. It is only natural to suppose that our atmosphere, in which the aerolite is formed, also contains the remainder of the known simple bodies, as it would appear that nature, holding metals in suspension in the atmosphere, liberates from time to time such portions of these metallic substances as are there, held in excess of the quantity required to maintain the universal equilibrium. We will now give the reader a few extracts from Dr. Walter's Flight's History of Meteorites.